All right. Welcome, everybody. Good morning and welcome to day 2 of the 2025 AIA Austin Design Excellence Conference. I really had a good time yesterday. I hope everybody, yesterday's sessions left everybody feeling inspired and ready for more. We've got a treat today, so I'm pretty excited. Our keynote speaker is Simon Demeuse, and I learned by asking, that is not how you pronounce his name, but that's how he does it in America, and that's what it's going to be. He's a partner at one of the most influential architecture firms in the world, Herzog & de Meuron, and we are honored that he is here to speak about his work here in Austin and beyond. And I'm really excited to do this because my son lives 75 feet from what will be the Memphis Art Museum, and I've been watching that Herzog project come to fruition over the last several years. So really excited to see what he's got in mind for Austin. First, I do want to extend a huge thank you to our keynote sponsor, Gator Millworks. He's going to speak first, so you can probably sit for a second. Your continued support of AIA Austin makes events like this possible, and we're so grateful. So please be sure to visit their table in the event center later today. Now let's welcome Chad Foster from Gator Millworks.
Good morning. My name is Chad Foster. I'm with Gator Millworks. We are an architectural millwork firm located in Louisiana. We do custom woodwork, millwork for high-end residential projects and commercial spaces. We have been a company that's been around for now 30 years. We're challenged by, we like to be challenged by hard details. One of the things we're most proud of is our in-house wood veneer. One of our abilities to control the wood veneer process from layouts has been an amazing thing to be a part of. We have some things in our booth that allows you to show you how this looks and how it works. If you don't know much about how wood veneer can be cut, spliced, we could be glad to help show you that path. It's a very unique process and a very fun process. To show you a little more about what we are and who we are, we have a video that we'd like to show of who we are.
Millwork, the intersection of imagination and innovation. For 3 decades, we've helped shape spaces, build ideas, and turn visions into reality. What started in a 30 by 50 foot backyard shop in 1995 has grown to a 78,000 square foot facility where what you imagine can be crafted. Today, we're more than millwork. We're a team of designers, engineers, and makers shaping every detail to fit the needs of the build. At Gator, we craft with intention, engineering every piece with the project, space, and the people in mind. Quality isn't just in what you see, but it's in how it's built. Every joint, frame, and finish. The details of a seamless edge, the depth of a meticulously crafted finish, the embodiment of something built to last. And for 3 decades, we've helped bring ideas to life, piece by piece, space by space. And through it all, we've stayed true to what matters. Our purpose, our people, and our process behind the projects. Custom millwork isn't just built. It's engineered, tailored, and brought to life. And for 30 years, we've never stopped refining how we do it. This is Gator, evolved, collaborative, and still building what's next. Gator, where millwork means more.
Thank you so much, Chad, and Gator Millworks. I do encourage absolutely everybody to go to all of the, we're going to do closer. Okay. I got the kind of like thing from Ingrid back there. Thank you, Chad. I do want everybody to go around and go to each of the booths and talk to the people who have sponsored this event. I have been coming to this and various conferences for several years, and when I first started coming to them, I'm just not going to lie. I found myself trying to avoid having to talk to anybody that I didn't know. But at this point in time, like, I look around this room, and these are people that I use and rely on as experts in our everyday life at Baldrige Architects. So everybody go around. There is a game. I'm not quite sure how it is played, but Ingrid handed, it's obviously some sort of bingo thing. So I encourage everybody to play the game. If you win, you get some sort of fancy champagne and something.
Homes Tour wristband.
Homes Tour wristband. Fantastic. That really is awesome. So now please welcome Simon Demeuse, partner at Herzog & Miron, the internationally acclaimed firm known for shaping architecture that is deeply connected to its place and purpose. Since joining the practice in 2005, Simon has guided projects across North America and Europe, from private residences in Napa Valley to complex urban developments that blend architecture, culture, and community. With a background that spans work at AMO in Rotterdam, Morphosis in Los Angeles, and degrees from SciArc and Harvard GSD, Simon brings a global perspective to the evolving role of architecture in the city. Today, he'll share how Herzog & Miron approaches urban challenges in a way that's both visionary and rooted in context. It's yours.
Hello, everybody. I hail from Basel, Switzerland. This is our office in by the St. Johannstor. It is a collection of several buildings. Pretty much every building you see on this slide has our office in it. Like the yellow apartment building on the bottom is where our interior shop is. The red building, which we call the garage, is where meetings room are. The copper gate was a mock-up for the De Young Museum, which is the entrance gate to our office. We have the red and the white building, which is all office spaces and etc. It's important, I think, to mention this because it has to do with the culture of the office, and it's in this culture. There's about 380 architects that are spread into these buildings, but that means that when you're an architect there, you sit in a space of about 30 people, never really in a huge place where you are aware that you're in a very big company. And in one of these spaces, you can have one project, which is maybe going through design development or so, or you could have 5 smaller projects. So what that means is that in a very Swiss way, we have two coffee breaks per day, and between the coffee breaks, people work. So it's not like in America where you can check your personal email and have food at your desk. It's pretty structured, but it does mean that you have these 2 coffee breaks is like almost like a school, right? It's like everybody comes to the cafeteria. In the summer, they are in the courtyard and they meet and they talk about the projects they're working on. We have 50 nationalities that are working in this place. So the demographics, people are quite young. A lot of people come out of architecture school, work there for 5 years, and then go on to open their own practices, and some people stay. It's always great if they stay, of course. But the fact is that it's a very kind of dynamic, young environment where there's a lot of exchange, and it's kind of a bit like an architecture school, I would say. So that also means that all these spaces, all these courtyards between these buildings are also part of the production. This is a model that we did for the Berggruen Institute in Los Angeles in the Villa Courtyard. So it's a really wonderful place to work. This is a view of the coffee break in the morning. This is one of the buildings that was newly built by us at the Rhine. So Basel is at the Rhine. You can see the river on the right here. This is an important shot, I think, as well, because it's in a building called the Shed. So all the buildings have a name. And you can see Jacques and Pierre in younger days, talking to one of our colleagues, and on the other side of the wall you can see another team talking and meeting. So it's a practice by two people. It's not started by one person. It's a practice by two people that are not the same person. If you meet Jacques, you get one thing. If you meet Pierre, you get another thing. If you meet both of them, you get something that even they didn't expect was going to happen, which is a conversation that progresses beyond ego. So we rarely, actually we don't get sketches that people say, now build this. What we get is a conversation, a method of looking at a place, at asking questions, which then also results in work that is very different from place to place. Because when you start a project, you don't start with, sometimes you do, Beijing Olympic Stadium maybe, but you don't start just with a master sketch idea. You start with asking questions, and that leads to what we call very specific architectural proposals for each one of them. This slide shows something that we started doing, I think, about 15 years ago, is to start making logos for our project, which are actually really just either sections or plan views that we make into a stamp. And it really shows how very different each one of the projects is. And these are to scale. So that also means that we do everything from the réfectoire, which is a very small, almost residential scale building, all the way to large urban plans. I could get into that. Maybe one thing about that is that we don't have specialists either. It's not like we have partners that are only doing urbanism or hospitals, or so people work across typologies, which we also think is very good to not be having a recipe for something, that you always kind of start with no preconceived notions of what something would need to be. One thing that does kind of tie our work together is the attention for public space. Here, this is the Elbe Philharmonie in Hamburg, where we put this concert hall on top of this existing warehouse building. And on top of this concert hall, you have this terrace where everybody can go with this incredible escalator. And it's free, it's non-ticketed. So it's, since its opening, had millions of people even from the city going there. So this terrace has really become part of the city, where people can see all the spires of the Hamburg churches. Tate, of course, the lawn in front is really, British people do really use lawns when they get the ability, they get one. But here, the turbine hall, of course, is also become like the terrace in Hamburg, and that's the first big project for our office. This was really a game changer. The turbine hall has become part of London, part of the city. People go there to meet each other, even if they don't go to the museum necessarily. So to make an architecture where people, in a way, are lured inside, where the boundary between outside and inside is, it's soft. In the Beijing Olympic Stadium, even today, people do Tai Chi underneath. It's kind of like going underneath the Eiffel Tower. It's part of this urban space. So we're very interested in how buildings interact with the city and how people can engage with buildings. So it's not binary. You're not inside or outside. There's a zone of discovery in buildings. Another aspect of our work, I guess, is the haptic. The materials that buildings are made out of, materials that are attractive, seductive maybe even, materials that people like to touch and be around. Wood is a material that we are very familiar with and that our practice has been using from the start. This is a building that was just opened a few months ago in Basel, an office building, which is a wooden building. It's called Hortus. Because of the garden, it's sustainability-wise, it's one of it's our best performing building we have done, and in Switzerland, the most performing building in terms of carbon footprint, etc., in Switzerland. Wood is amazing for us also because it's made out of many pieces. A tree is not unlimited in length. You have to make decisions as architects how you put these pieces together, which immediately brings a certain texture or refinement to the architecture. Here in the Kinderspital in Zurich, which was also recently finished, where you have this courtyard that you go first through the building, and then you arrive in this courtyard before you even go to the check-in. And it's this wooden terrace above where patients are walking and where you get kind of the idea of how the hospital functions. This is the rehab clinic in Basel, also a fully wood-clad building. We also let the wood age. We don't see that as a defect. If wood ages, it doesn't mean your building's failing. It gives it a certain patina. You can see that here as well in the rehab clinic, a clinic organized around 4 courtyards. We also often, when you design buildings or facades, the buildings and the facades are not, again, just a graphic idea of how you arrange your windows. The buildings and facades are a result of how people live in there. So here in the Rue de Suisse in Paris, these wooden shutters are modulating people's private space, dealing with sunlight and privacy. And this piece of architecture actually looks almost like a chest or a piece of furniture that stands in this courtyard and changes as people are living in the building. So today, 3 cities, 3 buildings. They're all mixed-use buildings. So let's just start. The first building was a project we developed all the way through DD, design development, and then COVID struck, and somehow the project never recovered from that. But it was extremely advanced in its development and would have been an incredible building in this city of Seattle, which, as some of you might know, the city, I wasn't so familiar with it, but its natural setting is breathtaking. The views you get, the landscape is very dynamic, the water edge and the topography all make for a very incredible city, where you also still have quite a bit of attractive old building stock. And the site that we were working on, this amazing, this tree in the middle of the city at the same scale of the architecture, so nature also in the city really setting its foot down, literally. Belltown, right there at Elliott Bay, was the neighborhood that the project was in, which also is an incredible walkable part of Seattle, where you have these great kind of buildings that have alleyways and cut-throughs, where you can even have commercial functions of the alleyway. So it's kind of a really that Belltown neighborhood was, from a pedestrian grain and scale, very inspiring. Lots of topography, because Belltown is on a slope towards Elliott Bay, and even here, like, really cool how these restaurants and these retail spaces are even sunken into this topography. So a lot of kind of a palette of architectural solutions is all around you always when you look at a place. And so when we start a project, here also lots of pocket parks, we try to always, that's why you'll see a lot of Simon's iPhone photos today, because we always take a lot of pictures and really try to look at a site very close and try to find cues to our architecture and that are responding to those things. The site is where the red block was. It was an infill site between 2 historic buildings, and it was also right at the end of the Alaskan Way Park, which was not constructed yet. There used to be a highway there that got capped, and they were building a park on it when we were working on the project. But what that means is that this old building, the Hull building, the site was next to it, away from the photograph, always had a gap the city block was never developed in front, so this historic building next to which our building was supposed to go was actually kind of a gateway site into another part of the historic neighborhood. This is from below with a simulation of the future park. So you can see there's quite a slope going from the site down towards the water. And the view that that slope gives you is, of course, incredible. And that's something that this project, or any project, of course, would want to take advantage of. This is a view from part of the infill site, and from the 5th floor, 4th floor, you start seeing this incredible bay beyond. That's the infill site. In a way, it was about completing a block that was never completed. So it's 2 buildings that stand, the Hull building and the Glazer building. Hull building, the site, and then the Glazer building, which is actually where the first Ace Hotel in America was or is. So I think that's kind of one of the first things we did, is draw a section through the site and try to organize the program in kind of a mind map. And it was clear that we wanted to take full advantage of this section. We wanted to mix the uses as much as possible, so that so it was a residential project. It was actually small studio flats, which was for short-term residents. So it's kind of a mix between a hotel and a normal apartment building. So there were like efficiency flats, very small flats, lots of them, and then mixed with like shared workspaces, coffee shops, restaurants, and then on the top also event space. So it was a very kind of meant to be a very active building where changing residents and kind of a buzzing active place. So we wanted to get that in the architecture by mixing these uses as much as possible. And another thing, of course, immediately what we wanted to do is make nature kind of a key part of the building. So this tree, like, immediately tried to say, we need to put a garden, and the garden structures the design. So the initial schemes, we were looking at how do you make a courtyard, how do you deal with the sidestepping, and making images immediately, trying to capture the vibe of the building, which was always conceived also as a wooden building. What we settled on then was really kind of a street or an alleyway that cut through the building, which, here you can see the level change, which was then, you have the vitrines of the shops along First Avenue, then you have a coffee shop and kiosk, and then you go through this cut underneath the building, and then descend down to the alleyway. And it's kind of like an architectural promenade. As you go down, you see the uses, the residential uses. Next to you, you see the shared workspaces, and you end up at the alleyway. So it was always conceived as an urban shortcut where people could go to this park from First and then go through this building. So make the building part of the daily routine and fabric of the city. On First, it was always very simple. The idea is like we just have this housing element that hovers above the public streetscape and connects these 2 buildings like a cut, and then people can meander underneath. Structurally, we made a cast-in-place concrete structure for the first 2 levels, and then we had a mass timber structure that was set on top. So when you work with wood, of course, it forces a certain precision. You have to really make structure the legible part of the building. The structure is what you live in, and so it takes rigor to plan it. But of course, when you have so many, a housing project also needs that anyway. So what we did is essentially we just made a center-loaded corridor, because the only way to get all the flats in there, and then we started peeling the last flats out to get the larger units in the edges, and then in the center you could repeat the unit type. And then you also, by doing that, you created this embrasure towards the alleyway, that the building, the garden, and the deck was kind of opening up towards this alley where you then could go down to the park from. Here you can see a bit of a closer plan with the different unit types. The unit type itself, it was an extremely small unit. I think it was a 14-foot span, the structural grid. And so the whole discussion was always about like, where do you sleep? Where do you cook? Where do you watch TV? Where do you bathe? And so in a one room, we figured out that it's really problematic, even though it's in one space, if you start mixing those zones too much. If you start having, you know, your couch in front of your oven, that's not very nice. So how do you do that when you have a very precise brief of you have to fit all these American fridges and all these things? So it was not easy. So what we ended up doing was come up with a zoning scheme where we kind of decide, we had many, and there's also other solutions, of course. This is not the only solution, but what we ended up choosing is that you have the bathing in the front, like many do, but then also we arranged it in a way that was kind of like open, that you had your shower cabin, and then you had your sink open when you come in, so it's very loft-like. Even though you have this small unit, you're immediately in this wooden room, because it's a wooden structure, and then everything feels very open. So we decided to put the kitchen towards the window as kind of an element that then also next to your couch could be kind of a, you know, a bookshelf or something, and then kind of shields your Monday night football area from the kitchen, and then you have your bed also low, and so we like that. And then in the end also, because people spend a lot of time actually around the kitchen. If you have friends over in a flat like this, you're probably going to be hanging out around the kitchen a while, and then you have the view, and then you're at the kitchen. And so we thought this functioned quite well. And at the entry, if it moves, at the entry here you can see some early studies of what this shower cabin would be like with this sink and then the restroom next to it. So kind of a very, pavilion-like arrangement. The corner flats were the ones that peeled out, where we had 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. So there it was tricky, and we came up with these diagonal windows that would then also be terraces and views to the bay. So you would come in, and then you would have here, you would have your kitchen in the front by the bathroom area. Then you would have your sitting area at this terrace, and then you would have the sleeping behind it. The facade, I mean, it's a very repetitive housing project, so it was not about inventing curls or shapes. It was just about reflecting the inside program, and somehow that worked really well in this setting of this historic brick building. So we had essentially spandrel on the slab and on the partition walls, and then we also had 2 ventilation windows or panels next to those, which allowed us to get a step in the facade to open those panels. And by doing so, you know, this is actually a Sullivan building that was demolished in Seattle, which was always very inspiring to us to see how the facade undulates and actually is almost like a stack of bay windows next to each other. So by doing this, we also were able to get some kind of stepping, you know, with the 2 ventilation panels and the spandrel in the middle, and they were lined in recycled copper, which was stabilized for water runoff, and it was kind of an interesting product. But it also worked well from a color tone point of view, a texture point of view. In order to control the window size, we made this horizontal sash window looking line, which also worked really well, you know, in this historic setting. And this is how it interfaced with its neighbors. And then at night, this weather protection blade, and then at the vitrines, we made the rounded corners, so we bought 4 or 5 pieces of round glass and then have straight glass in between to give it this kind of, to make it a bit special standing on the street. These cities are very up and down. That's also a topic you'll see in in Bentonville. And so that means that you have a lot of these partition walls on the side, which back in the day people were putting commercial advertising and lots of messages on. And so we also had these very large partition wall, and we were working with an idea of using a kind of a terracotta, it's actually a pigmented concrete panel that had a certain texture to it that we would then just as a clip-on system put on the facade and then actually stagger the panels. And so it gave you a very textured, well, it's still a very tall and monolithic surface, but it had a lot of texture to it, and it actually changed with the shadow during the day. The top pavilion, which was very valuable space, of course, for the clients, we just put a wooden structure that came out of the building on top with beams going across that then had this incredible terrace towards Elliott Bay, and then in the front, bit of a heck render on top, but in the front we therefore also had a crown, just like the buildings next to it. In the middle we had the post and beam coming out and kind of had a silhouette, which was also similar to the buildings next to it. So this was a tough one to lose, so at least I get to lecture about it. And then this project you guys are familiar with, but we're in Texas, so I felt like let's do a walkthrough of the Sixteen Blanco project. Very different context. Austin, Texas, you guys know exactly where that is, but very different from what I showed. I've been coming to Austin, Texas for quite a while. I'm married to, my wife is from Austin, and so Austin, Texas is a very a place where people enjoy their lifestyle, and that has a lot to do with, of course, places like Barton Springs and very nice garden. Some owners of these properties are in the room, but it's just incredible how this dwelling vibe, this like relaxed Austin when the weather is not too hot, is just an incredible place to be. The live oak trees and yeah, the kind of residential dwelling you get. This is the porch of my parents-in-law, which is one of my favorite places in Austin. So there's a lot of right architectural types here that respond to this climate. Porches, it's almost like like a pattern language, like how you have things that work well here, and we're not the first ones that are building here, and so there's a lot of cues also here in Austin to take. The site is on the border of Clarksville, Castle Hill, and also then downtown, of course, so it's kind of a junction site because you have this very green, leafy neighborhood, and then you have this harder commercial street that then leads to downtown. So you belong to both. You belong on one end. You belong to this kind of wooden bungalow-clad neighborhood with, again, incredible trees and yeah, I mean, great living and some very nice historic buildings with shaded outdoor space, wood, all kinds of good ways of dealing with this climate. Orange is residential, red is commercial, so that too, junction, you're between kind of a commercial area and a residential area. Here, 6th Street as we found it. There is a lot of commercial activity on 6th Street, which has like a bungalow scale, so that was also important for us. It's like, how do we build a structure here with shopping and restaurants, and how do we still have this scale of what is on 6th Street as a lifeline that could continue. We actually had to keep this building. This building is now gone, but it's been put in a box and every brick has been accounted for, and it will be reconstructed. This is also very nice how you can cut to the restaurants from 6th through these buildings. So there's these connections, which we were also inspired by. A heat map that also shows, of course, that these leafy neighborhoods are performing much better than the kind of commercial strips without much trees and planting. And again, we're not the first here. There is extremely nice examples of how people have dealt with passive cooling strategies and living here in this warmer climate. Charles Moore's house, San Jose Hotel, also wonderful pervious surfaces on the ground, lots of pergolas and shading. Here the site again, it actually is the entire city block, where from Z Tejas, which you guys know, no longer there, all the way to Blanco is actually the project. And so dealing with historic structures that partially and some in full have to stay is also a big ingredient of the project. This is pictures yesterday. I don't know why. So this hole, this is not what we're proud of, this hole. I mean, this hole is not something, I mean, people always tell me, look how the project's advancing, and I just can't wait for this hole to be filled so we can just forget about it. It has a lot to do with the parking ordinance rules, which actually also now have been relaxed. When we were getting all the permits, there was very strong numbers and requirements for parking that also made us go deeper even than what the clients thought they needed. But whatever, it is how it is. And but what this picture also shows is that there's a very strong topography, right? Like that's the alley you see in the back, like creeping all the way up there. And then that's, of course, 6th over there. So if you would imagine striking a straight line from 6th into this property, you actually get a 2-story kind of wall still in the back, because it's a very big change in topography. Here's a partial historic structure that we will integrate into the building. So this is not the best model, but it illustrates pretty well what the idea is to first, on the first, it's like, so our clients were very brave to actually go quickly with this idea, because you could just imagine that you do 3 different buildings. You do like a hotel building, so that's the program. You do a hotel building, you do an office building, and you do a condo building, and then you kind of connect it with some plinth or something. That would be kind of the straightforward way to go, with separate elevator cores, etc. But we were able, together with the client, to kind of get excited about the idea of doing a horizontal striation where you put all the commercial, and back then there was also still office. It can also be reverted back to office still, that you do all commercial, all office, all hotel, and then the residences on top. So like a horizontal system with courtyards in it. So this is the ground floor, where you can see that the scale of the commercial is kind of taking the same scale as these historic buildings, and you also introduce these alleyways and these cuts that go in it, like you also saw in these historic buildings, leading to courtyards in the back. So that means that all these spaces have two exposures, the street and the back, and then also the alleyways in between. So it's a very porous thing that is also like the non-ticketed museum space. You saw places where people can go in and actually make it part of their city and feel like they're in that you know, it's their shortcut, it's their city. On top, we put these back then still office and now commercial functions. We put these setback volumes with these terraces all around, almost like New Orleans, that every one of these tenants above has this big terrace overlooking the street and the courtyards below. On top of that, we put all the hotel rooms organized in little streets with, you know, courtyards and light to above that kind of meander on top of the commercial space. And on top of that, we put the residences, which were really houses, you know, 2-story houses that are entered from the top, that are on top of this hotel space. So we got this very, you know, dynamic structure, which, and now I gotta go back to that slide, in which the gardens and the landscape play as much of a role as the architecture. So we call that the built and the non-built. And so the non-built is very important. We work with Chrissy Teneyck's team on the landscape, and the landscape is like, you know, always there. The landscape is the partner of the architect, and when people are in, no matter what level they're on, they're always in direct relationship with these gardens. Also interesting to note is that the historic house in the middle, referred to as 1611, is going to be rebuilt, and the front will still have also a shop, and a bellboy for the hotel will be in there, or girl. And the house, the roof, we took it off, and so we put a garden in. So when you go into the project from the main central entry, which will be the old house in the middle, you open, there will be a little bell, just like a shop, and then you go from there into a garden. So the building is also a concrete structure below, with actually precast concrete beams. And then it transitions to a wooden structure. The precast structure on the 1st and 2nd floor also already has wooden stringers within. Here you can see a section which kind of cuts through the courtyards and the streets, so there's a lot of setting back going on, which has to do with, like, of course, meeting the scale of the neighborhood around it. And then fire regulations, you can not clad, so we want to have this wooden structure, we want to clad it in wood, of course, we want to clad it in natural materials that work well with all these plants and these gardens. You can't clad wood above, I think, 40, is it 40 feet, Richard, or yes, something? And so there we switched to brick. So it was a bit counterintuitive that you do wood and then brick on top, but we really liked that in the end, that these houses and these hotel spaces already had a lot of brick. And you'll see it's a whitewashed wood and a natural wood. It's actually Akoya. And then on top of it we have brick, which is also whitewashed. Which of course, you know, in the hot climate, to have lighter materials works well. So here you see an elevation of what's happening, the terraces on top of the retail, the gardens with the hotel rooms on top, the gardens with the residences on top, the wood-clad planters which transition to the brick planters on top. We're doing mock-ups now with our team, looking at the texture of the brick, etc. The awnings in the front are actually glass and they're photovoltaic, so they absorb the heat. They're not going to be a greenhouse and get really hot because they're actually solar cells with a red frit on top. And so the building is really a sum of its parts. It's not, again, like a single sketch or a single shape. It's like a building where every element kind of takes part, and you get this very wild structure, but then again, it's very rational as well. It's a wooden structure, so even though there is setbacks, which is challenging, of course, to detail setbacks, as you guys know, nevertheless, the structure is continuous, so there's no transfers or anything. The structure goes up straight. Ground floor, the street. We love the idea of these awnings on the street to kind of make it more pedestrian again, to string it with activity, which, you know, this is kind of a very old picture to see how people dealt with heat and streets in previous days. We love these huge awnings in these images, so we always wanted to make this awning on the street very much part of the architecture. Here you can see, you know, when you're on the street, of course, you have new buildings in which we have, you know, this one story with kind of just storefront glazing, and then we took the CLT and kind of like cut it out to become the support of this awning. So it's a very kind of spatial element. When you walk on the sidewalk, you feel sheltered, you feel good, and then that is interrupted by these historic buildings. So the one that we already talked about, the brick building where you enter, and then also here we keep portion of a historic facade behind which you then have a courtyard, and then the building starts a bit deeper in to again create these kind of pockets and places that are human scaled. And here, these are also not all studies from the most recent, but the principles remain the same. This is one of these alleyways that you see where you go from the street to one of the courtyards in the back. Here is a very earlier rendering of this house where you still have this kiosk or this bookstop on the left, and then you have the hotel person greeting you on the right. It's not a lobby. And then you go in the center, and then you enter. That's where you have this door. Then you enter this tall brick garden space from which you then go through the garden space where you then go into the next space. So it's a very kind of almost labyrinthian, but you know, you will find yourself. But it's like one open space transitioning to another open space, like stairs for people to go up to the hotel level, and kind of like a continuous fabric where you also are always aware of these bridges of other levels going across. So it's quite something. The structure also is your kind of like your leading motif. You have a very strong visual structure. These are very massive columns. I think they're 2 feet by 2 feet, and so they're always there. So it's almost like a Japanese temple that you go through this thing, and of course it has many directions and places you can go to, but there's really a good motif. There's something that always accompanies you, which is this continuous palette of materials and this structure that kind of, you know, leads you. The building also is strong enough to make teamed environments in it. There is a brasserie that the clients are doing, and you see that it can handle it. That also within this structure you can actually have some commercial spaces that can express themselves as well, which we also like, because that means the building can change over time. So the idea of these kind of like very legible structures is not just architectural, it's also you make the structure come to the foreground, and by doing so you can have a variety of tenants over time changing, and the building is flexible in that way. This will be a juice land, is what I'm told in there. The second floor is where you have all these terraces, right? So you also have these commercial blocks there, which again could be offices, and then the terraces around it where you have more bridges and terraces, and you're looking down in these courtyards from above, which so the courtyards also orient you at that point, because you kind of recognize where you are coming from and where you have been. So yes, landscape is extremely important, also on this level, of course, and so we are very closely working to get the right trees and nature that works here. A stair which is developed since, but the idea is the same. The stair then from the commercial level that leads you up to the hotel. We have changed it a bit, but it's similar still. So there is elevators in the building, but all circulation is outside. There's not one interior corridor. So people are constantly walking outside. When you go up that stair, that's there, and then you arrive on top, and then you arrive at the hotel level. And then at the hotel level, it's kind of this linear moment where the two courtyards are located below, and then you kind of start seeing the residences above, and then the hotel rooms at the gardens, and then with two public squares, one where you have the swimming pool overlooking Blanco, which is kind of, you can already see a residence above, some nooks for the pool bar. The curtains, I think, have to go, but then this is how these hallways work. I mean, you saw it in the plan. Did I show the plan? Here. It's kind of like almost like an Ottoman palace or something, where you have these gardens and these hallways, and it's organized in these quadrants. So you enter, you come up in the center, and then you go to your neighborhood and your street, and then you have, actually this is also still down there. This is the lobby. So like from the lobby, you can take an elevator up, and then you end up on one of these exterior places upstairs, or you can take the stairs up. So the lobby actually has two full levels, which is a very vertical space and draws light from the top as well. But so you end up in these streets. I think you might need an app to figure out where the room is, but once you go there, you are in a sky space, and then we'll talk about the residence above, because that's already a library of a residence above of the window, looking down into the hallway, and then you've always 4 doors in one of those spaces open to the sky, and that's where you go into your hotel room. And the hotel room, again, it's this whole hours and hours and hours of discussing where's the bed, where's, we then ended up with a bed in the middle, which was also like the clients really wanted that. Normally we tend to put the bed against the wall, but then actually it was kind of an interesting decision, because then the bed becomes this place that you can go around, and then you have a back side of the bed which can really be for dressing and a kind of arrival space, and then the front side, the bed is low. So that means when the bed is low, you get the view to your courtyard. Every single room has a courtyard, and that is then towards a garden. And then your bathroom, which was always like immediately we wanted to do this to kind of have an outdoor shower almost. So your bathroom is right next to this this space, this terrace, this courtyard of yours, and so you can open that. So we came up with this idea of kind of a Japanese tub idea that then also is a shower next to this window. So this is an earlier section. I mean, the rooms have developed a lot through it, where you can also see that at the entry, we were able to get a clear story window above the door. So you actually get a courtyard in the front and a clear story window in the back. So you get this very kind of breezy room, again, in this wooden structure with the bed in the middle, and the bed really becomes almost part of the architecture. That is a already more developed view of the bathroom, where you have this tub, this shower, 2 windows, and your sink. The floors are terracotta tiles in the bedrooms. There's several units types, so the wooden structure also, like, you know, over time you can join rooms, you can have single rooms, you can have double rooms, and so that's also, with the plumbing, something that we really thought about. And so already in the beginning you will have suites that are double spaces, which essentially have the plumbing and such in the same places as those restrooms that you have in the single rooms. The residences are entered from the top level. They have their own walkways that are towards the courtyards. Here you can see on top there, where you have the breeze block and these planters. That's where you enter. So you have this hallway, and then when you have your house, then you arrive at the planter, and then you have there a courtyard that you open the door and you get into your courtyard, and then you're in your world. This is an earlier view of this hallway, and then there on the left you would get into your house, open this gate, and then you enter in this courtyard, which then already also has a whole, or an opening to below to the hotels with these gardens around it, leading you in a very, that's the courtyard, leading you into a very kind of open wooden structure. It's almost like a loft. I've used that word before now, but it is very loft-like, and so therefore it's very unique, because in a way, you know, you could live down the street in a wooden bungalow with gardens all around you, so like what are you offering here? And so we felt that it's interesting to actually try to offer a house, not like, you know, a glass. This side is not about views, like a tower downtown, so you have to kind of create your own context, and by having all these outdoor spaces by these houses, you do that. So you get this very breezy dwelling where you're always in relationship, even on those heights, with an outdoor space. And then we have these elements that kind of are framing the rooms, but all the rooms kind of flow together. So yeah, every room has at least one exposure to an outdoor space. This is then a study of one of these terraces towards 6th with a small pool. Come on. You can go down then to your sleeping level, which is where you go down here, and then these windows are looking down into that space. You saw the hotel rooms with the 4 doors below. That's why you put the shelves there, because we studied the angle of visual exposure. This is a master suite or bedroom with its own very large terrace, and then its restroom. No, yeah, bathroom. That's the bathroom there. That's the master suite. So there's a huge interior part to the project. We do interiors a lot. We like doing interiors. It's a pleasure when you can actually not just do core and shell, but also do interiors. And this is one of these projects where we get to do that. So here you can see more advanced studies of this bed with this hole in it, which is very important because when you come into the room, you immediately see your garden. This headboard we are kind of calling the Texas Longhorns. It's a board that curves and then has a light fixture in it behind your bed. The pools. This is behind the bed going to the restroom on the right. And these are then mock-ups in the furniture factory, actually in Milan, where we are working intensely with clients on developing it, testing heights of side tables. These mock-ups are like working models. It's a pleasure to be able to work at one-to-one, making lights, making furniture. This is an adjustable table that we're making for the hotel. The spa, we're also designing every corner where you will have an outdoor courtyard. That's the alleyway on top. And so this level change allows us to have this courtyard. Changing rooms, sauna, grooming station. The members club is a big part of it, which is really great because it's a full quadrant of the structure where you come in and you immediately again get this garden, and here we kind of raise the windows so that you have the datum of the bar becoming the datum of the seating area. Next door, furniture, lighting, the whole thing. And of course, our clients are extremely experienced with interiors and have done many hotels. So this is also possible because we just get amazing feedback, and it's a very nice conversation that leads to pretty sophisticated solutions. Cinema in the middle, or screening room, and dining on the other side. This is a view from Blanco. The site, you've seen it. We're all exhausted. I'm out of time. I still have Bentonville, but the good news is that actually I found out only last week that I'm not really allowed to talk about it. So, but there is 2 images published, so I'll show those images, and then I'll show a little bit, where, you guys might know this, but I mean, Bentonville, it's pretty interesting how you have these 3 cities, actually 4, but you have Fayetteville where the university is, you have Bentonville and Bella Vista, and then Springdale in the middle, which are all now collected with bike paths, and so it's one kind of, it's becoming this necklace of these cities, and Bentonville is right there, and our site is in a very amazing location in this Bentonville part of this city, of this necklace. This bike infrastructure people are building there is incredible. I think it's actually one of the longest continuous trails available in the US, if not the world. It's all been done in the last 10 years, so people are very attracted to go there for the recreation. And then you have the Ozarks. I mean, I've never been there, but it is really quite incredible what people are doing, and how nice this landscape is, and how, I mean, this is just for bikes, all these bridges and everything they're building. And it all arrives, and then of course you have Crystal Bridges at the edge. These trails then go into Crystal Bridges, which has this park with all this art and deers and art. And then, the city just starts all of a sudden to emerge once you come out of this green, and so we are right at the edge of that. This where this red arrow is spanning the city square to Crystal Bridges, and it's this very kind of like slow ramp up to this historic downtown area, which is actually it's got amazing good bones, and once upon a time it was also a very active, this is of course all rebuilt in the 90s, even the ATM machine is bricked in, but this was historically a brick 2-story place, and from the pictures you see around, it used to be a very active downtown, and somehow right now with the business that is going on there's tons of people moving there again, and so there's a great interest in reactivating this downtown, this city, and we have been asked to develop this full city block, and so it's a great opportunity to kind of here as well look around and see what works well and what's been there, and how do you then put a density in there which has not happened yet in this city. We love the fact that these buildings, this is the bank that has their own address, all these places, and that's something also that we're very interested in this project, and not just do a very large singular development, but to actually still on a block like this have different addresses so that people know where they live and where they go, etc. And this residual space that you have here, which of course is used for cars and trash cans and parking and stuff, is actually super nice. If you would get rid of the cars and of the trash cans, you have this network of beautiful alleyways, and the backs of the buildings are actually used a lot here. I mean, that's a bar that you enter from the back, and so that's something that also interests us a lot, this looseness of this carpet, and how do you keep that when you develop this whole city block? And we know how, because we've done it. This is the Ledger building, which is, I mean, people like it. It's biking. You can bike on top, but it's a very large singular building, filling a full site in this city. It's another approach. But I think for the project that we are asked, which is housing and commercial and working, so all of it, mixed use, this wouldn't be the right approach to do like a singular building like this. Or this is a hotel that is now constructed. It's very nice, but it's also a full city block and it's a continuous facade. And I think that we have an opportunity here to break it up a bit more. And so this is the momentary where you can see actually already kind of a more broken up approach where you have different heights. People really like this place. And so we're getting our cues around for our architecture. I was allowed to show some snippets of the buildings in a mood board. So these are some historic pictures of Bentonville, some of our own work. This is in Germany. And some snippets of the building that's actually already fully done with DD and in construction documents right now. Loggias, plants, similar themes, reclaimed brick, painted brick, natural brick. And I'm going to leave it like that. So that is the third city that has been rendered partially. Somehow the city square is very sensitive. You can see that we reconstruct the city square, but we actually looked at the historic drawings from 1940 or 30 and took the actual, and we rebuilt it. Of course, it's Disney, but we rebuilt it with reclaimed brick. And then here you can kind of see how the first building of the series of buildings that will happen is emerging behind this city block. So this is just the very end. Did I talk about sustainability? No, but maybe I was, because we think that in the end we're architects and buildings should be about economy when you do mixed use. The client, the brief, the marketing has to work. Buildings should be about society. It should be about how people interact with them. They should give an awareness of community. They should give comfort, health, and beauty. Buildings are about energy. We built with wood, passive cooled exterior spaces, and that's the end of that. Thank you.
Okay, I made the executive decision to just let him keep going there, so there is no Q&A. But thank you, Simon. Thank you so much for sharing what you guys are doing. That was fantastic. So, as we close the session, everybody, I want to give a final thank you to Gator Millworks for the generous support. Don't forget to visit their tables. Also, the other sponsors, including GPRS Existing Conditions, Farmhouse Stone, Rogers O'Brien Construction, Austin Green Energy Building, and Anderson Windows and Doors. Your feedback is valuable. That was great.